I eased my car into the gravel driveway, the late afternoon sun throwing amber streaks across the windshield. The clock on the dashboard glowed 4:17 p.m., a full hour earlier than I'd planned to be here. My heels clicked against the porch steps, a sound far too loud for the quiet suburb of Maple Ridge, Connecticut. I wasn't supposed to be home yet. I'd left the city after a last-minute client cancellation, thinking I'd surprise my parents with an early visit. Instead, the surprise landed squarely on me. Through the half-open front door drifted the thud of boxes sliding across hardwood and my mother's unmistakable hum, low and determined, the way she used to hum when scolding me as a kid. I froze. From where I stood, I could see into my old bedroom. My father bending over a cardboard box labeled in black marker, Clara's winter clothes. My childhood quilt, the one with the frayed lilac stitching, lay folded beside it like a discarded keepsake. "Do you think she'll be upset?" my mother whispered. "She'll thank us later," Dad replied, taping the box shut. The words sank in like a slow, cold tide. My throat tightened. My pulse thudded against my silk blouse. A tiny studio. Were they planning to shrink my life into a shoebox while I was gone? The phone in my handbag buzzed. A reminder for tomorrow's board meeting, an echo of the life they clearly believed I wasn't living. I stepped inside. "What exactly are you doing?" I was 19 the night everything snapped. The New Hampshire air outside our farmhouse had that early spring bite, the kind that nips at your skin and smells faintly of damp pine. I remember standing in the narrow hallway just off the kitchen, my palms pressed flat against the old wallpaper's faded daisies, trying to ground myself while Mom's voice rose and cracked. "Zoe, you can't just throw away your future like this," she shouted, every syllable trembling with a mix of panic and fury. Dad leaned against the doorway, arms folded tight across his chest like a fortress. "Art school in Chicago isn't a plan," he said, his tone so low it rattled my ribs. "It's a gamble." My acceptance letter, creased from too many times of being opened and reread, shook in my hands. "It's my plan," I whispered, though the quiver in my voice betrayed me. Mom's face softened for half a heartbeat, then hardened again. "We've saved for college, yes, but not for some fantasy. You need something stable, teaching, nursing, something that lasts." The lump in my throat grew until it felt like a stone. All my sketches, the late nights bent over charcoal and paper, the way my chest swelled when I captured a moment's light. Didn't they see any of it? Grandma June, who had been quietly drying dishes at the sink, finally turned. Her silver hair caught the weak overhead light like moonlight on water. Without a word, she crossed the room and pressed something small into my hand, her old fountain pen, the one she used when she signed her first book contract decades ago. "Your future is yours to sign, Zoe," she said softly, loud enough for all of us to hear. Mom exhaled, a sharp, wounded sound. Dad looked away. I felt my pulse hammering in my wrists. That pen, cool, perfectly balanced, felt like a lifeline. I closed my fingers around it, its weight both delicate and unshakable. "I'm going," I said, louder this time. "Chicago. I'll figure it out." Dad's jaw tightened. Mom's eyes glistened with something between anger and fear. I turned before they could reply. The screen door creaked and slammed behind me, the spring night swallowing their protests. My car keys were already in my pocket. My hands shook so badly, I nearly dropped them, but I didn't stop. That night, as I drove toward the city lights on the horizon, Grandma's pen rested on the passenger seat, a quiet promise that my story would be written by me alone. I left that night with a single suitcase and a heartbeat that felt like a drumline in my chest. The air outside smelled of late summer rain, heavy and electric, and every step away from my parents' house loosened something that had been knotted inside me for years. I crashed for a few weeks on my college friend Olivia's couch in Chicago. Her tiny apartment smelled of burnt espresso and lavender cleaning spray, chaotic but comforting. By day, I worked double shifts at a corner cafe, my fingers raw from scrubbing counters and refilling coffee urns. By night, I buried myself in the quiet glow of a borrowed laptop, scrolling through design tutorials until my eyes blurred. Graphic design had always been the one thing that lit me up. In high school, I'd spent hours drawing on the backs of notebooks, but I'd never been allowed to think of it as a career. "That's a hobby, Harper," my mother once sniffed. "Not a livelihood."
Her voice haunted me when the
Cafe closed and I huddled in Olivia's cramped living room, a blanket draped across my knees, my fingertips aching from the trackpad. One evening, Olivia introduced me to her aunt, Denise, a seasoned creative director at a boutique ad agency. Denise wore bold red glasses and a linen blazer the color of storm clouds. She listened without interrupting as I haltingly explained my dreams. Then she tapped a finger against her coffee mug and said, "Talent is nothing without grit. You've got the first. Now show me the second." That sentence became my silent mantra. Under Denise's mentorship, I learned to build portfolios, to pitch designs with confidence even when my voice trembled. She pushed me through long nights of revisions, taught me how to defend my ideas without apology. Every rejection email felt like a bruise, but each small win healed something deeper. My first freelance logo, my first paying client, the first time someone introduced me as the designer. Money trickled in at first, just enough to move into a one-bedroom near Lakeview with squeaky floors and a balcony that caught the sunrise. I painted the walls a soft eggshell blue, the same shade as the ceramic bird Grandma Louise once gave me. That bird had sat on my childhood nightstand, a quiet reminder that I could fly when I was ready. I placed it now on a shelf above my desk, a witness to every late-night breakthrough and every morning coffee. 3 years blurred into 5. My client list grew from mom-and-pop shops to mid-sized corporations. By 30, I'd co-founded my own design studio, Harbor and Company, named for the safe haven I'd created for myself. We landed contracts that made my old cafe wages look like pocket change. Online, I stayed deliberately vague. My parents received occasional holiday texts, polite but distant, and never saw more than carefully cropped snapshots, a cup of latte art, a city skyline at dusk. They didn't know that the skyline belonged to the view from my penthouse office. They didn't know the little ceramic bird still watched over me, steady and unshaken. I kept it that way for now. I'd invited them under the guise of a casual dinner, nothing fancy, nothing intimidating. "Just catching up," I'd said over the phone, careful to keep my voice neutral. Even now, as I waited by the glass wall of my downtown loft, I could feel the old nerves fluttering like moths against a porch light. The city pulsed beneath me. Taxis streaked yellow across the slick evening streets, and the low hum of Friday night laughter drifted up like smoke. I pressed my fingertips against the cool pane, breathing in the scent of roasted garlic and rosemary from the kitchen. My caterer, yes, I'd hired one, had outdone herself. When the elevator chimed, I smoothed the soft cream silk of my blouse and checked my reflection in the wide bronze mirror. A single chip marred the pale polish on my left thumb. I smiled at it, some imperfections I'd grown to love. The door swung open. Mom stepped inside first, her cardigan already damp from the drizzle. Dad followed, heavier than I remembered, shoulders rounded by the weight of things unsaid. And then there was Lily, my younger sister, clutching her purse as if it were armor. "Savannah," Mom breathed, eyes sweeping the high ceilings, the warm walnut floors, the walls lined with framed photography from my travels. "This is yours." I let the question hang, offering them time to take it in. The loft glowed with soft amber light. An art piece, my first indulgence when the checks finally started clearing, commanded the far wall, a splash of cobalt and copper, all sharp angles and courage. Dad cleared his throat. "You've done well." He sounded almost suspicious, as though success were a trick I'd played. I moved toward the long marble island, the place where I'd first signed the papers for my business. "It's more than well, Dad. It's mine. All of it." Silence settled, thicker than the scent of rosemary. Lily's eyes narrowed.
"Wait.
"I thought you were barely making rent in that tiny studio." I tilted my head, letting a slow smile form. "That's what you assumed." Mom's hand trembled against the back of a leather stool. "But when you left, Savannah, we thought you'd struggle. We only wanted to help. Help, I echoed, the old ache surfacing but no longer stinging. Like the night I came home early and found you packing my things into boxes? Planning to move me into a space barely big enough for a bed? That kind of help. Mom flinched. Dad shifted, his jaw tight. I rested a palm flat against the cool marble. I built my own company, Mom. Carter and Vale Creative. Maybe you've heard of it. I watched their faces. Nothing. National campaigns, six-figure contracts. The photos on that wall?
Mine.
Taken on shoots you never knew I led. Dad's brows knitted. Savannah, why didn't you tell us? Because you never asked, I said softly. You only planned.
For me.
Without me. Lily sank onto a stool, her voice barely a whisper. You own this place? And the 2 floors below, I said, not to gloat but to draw the truth into the room like sunlight. Investment property. Paid in full. The hush that followed was almost tender. The city's heartbeat carried through the windows, steady and certain. Mom's eyes welled. We were wrong. For the first time in years, I believed she meant it. I reached for the bottle of wine chilling in the silver bucket, the one I'd chosen to celebrate this exact moment. As I poured, the crystal glasses caught the light and scattered it across the marble like tiny stars. To new beginnings, I said. On my terms. They raised their glasses, hesitant, humbled, while I stood, finally, without the weight of needing their permission. I let the silence linger, the kind that makes people fidget. My father finally clears his throat, the same sound he used to make before a lecture. But this time, no words come out. My mother's fingers twist the strap of her handbag until her knuckles pale. I lean against the edge of my desk, arms folded. The soft leather of my chair creaks as it settles behind me, a quiet reminder that this is my office, my ground. You know, I begin, my voice calm but steady. I spent years thinking I had to earn your approval. I thought if I worked hard enough, one day you'd see me. But that day never came. My mother looks up sharply, eyes glassy. Rachel. No, I lift a hand, not unkindly but firm.
Please.
Let me finish. They both fall silent again. When I left, I continue. I promised myself I wouldn't build a life out of bitterness. I wanted to build something out of worth. And I did. This company, this life, none of it was to prove you wrong. It was to prove me right. A tear slips down my mother's cheek. My father's jaw tightens, a muscle twitching like he's holding back every old argument. So here's where we stand, I say, pushing away from the desk. The sound of my heels on the hardwood is deliberate, measured. You came here to pack my things, to move me into a tiny studio you thought I belonged in. But now you're standing in the headquarters of a business I built from scratch. And I decide what happens next. My mother whispers, almost pleading. We were trying to help. I know, I say softly, but help isn't control. And control isn't love. I draw a slow breath. I'm willing to be part of this family again. But there are conditions. My father finally meets my gaze. Conditions? Yes. I step closer, close enough to see the faint silver at his temples. First, you stop deciding who I am supposed to be. No more comments about what's appropriate for a daughter. No more quiet judgments about my choices. He blinks, stunned, but doesn't speak. Second, I continue. You start pursuing something for yourselves. When was the last time you chased a dream? Dad, you used to sketch furniture designs in the garage. Mom, you talked about opening a flower shop. You gave those up for me, and then tried to cage me with the weight of those sacrifices. That cycle ends today. My mother's lips part, a small gasp escaping. And third, I say gently, we talk. Honestly. No more silent punishments. No more pretending everything's fine while resentment grows. We speak, even when it's hard. The room feels heavier and lighter all at once, like a storm has passed but the air still hums. My father exhales, long and slow. You'd really want us to chase those old dreams? I'd love nothing more. I reply, and for the first time my voice softens completely. Because that's what family should be, people who push each other forward, not hold each other back. A single nod from him, small but certain. My mother wipes her tears and whispers, "Okay." I offer a faint smile. Then we start from here. The house felt different the next time I walked in, not because the furniture had changed, but because the air had. My parents' voices carried from the kitchen in a softer register, almost tentative. When my mother looked up, she smiled. Not the brittle smile I had grown used to, but something gentler, like she was learning how to begin again. "Hi, Claire," she said, and for the first time in years, my name sounded like an invitation instead of a summons. My father stepped forward. His shoulders, once squared like stone pillars, were a little less rigid. We started clearing out the old den. Thought it might make a nice studio. For you, when you visit. A small laugh escaped me before I could catch it. Not mockery, just the stunned, quiet kind that comes when a wall finally cracks. "That sounds really nice," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. In the weeks since the confrontation, they had begun small acts of repair. My mother enrolled in a pottery class, something she'd long put off. My father finally called his sister after a decade of silence. They were clumsy steps, but they were steps. Standing in the doorway, I let my gaze rest on the old photograph of me as a teenager. Arms crossed, chin defiant. The girl in that frame had once believed she had to fight or be forgotten. I reached into my bag and touched the smooth, worn edge of the silver locket my grandmother had given me the day I left home. "Never let anyone pack your dreams into a smaller box," she had whispered. That locket had been my compass through every late-night study session, every pitch meeting, every silent victory. I opened it now, tracing the tiny engraving inside. "Your life, your size." For the first time, those words didn't feel like armor. They felt like peace. I turned toward my parents, their faces expectant, unsure. "I'm glad I came home early that day," I said quietly. "It showed me what we all still needed to unpack." Their smiles wavered, then steadied. As I slipped the locket back around my neck, the weight of it felt lighter, like the closing line of a story I had finally chosen for myself. My life. My size. And finally, ours to grow into, together.